A Plaguelands Media production.
Hey everyone, this is Hugh from Plaguelands Media bringing you another graphic novel review, so cheers. Oh, that Guinness is delicious. Today I'm looking at Preacher Volume 2, Until the End of the World. Now, this basically is two stories. We are following the first story, which gives us a bit of a backstory of Jesse Custer and his childhood growing up. And then we move on to a story that primarily concerns Cassidy and a little bit of his backstory. But this is where Garth Ennis really comes into his own with this series, because this gets pretty messed up. So if you're squeamish or faint of heart, maybe go and watch another video. If you have no idea about Preacher, go and watch my review of Volume 1 of the graphic novel series. But rereading this, absolutely loved it. Had a hell of a time with this one. It was fun. It was disturbing. It was everything you want a Garth Ennis graphic novel to be. So much so that I'm kind of looking at getting a kind of his run of Hellblazer, because I'm just a huge fan of his work. I never read any of his run on Hitman, something that I really have to rectify. He is known for creating one of the most fucked up characters in the history of comic books, this guy called Dog Welder, who basically, that's his thing. He welds dead dogs to the villains. Yeah, that's the mindset we're working with here with Preacher. Like the first graphic novel, you might find some of this distasteful. You might find some of it offensive, especially the religious connotations that are contained within. And if that's the case, then please, I implore you to stop watching now. You're probably not going to like this video. But if you want to know a little bit more about Jesse Custer, why he left Tulip, and his kind of upbringing, then by all means, stick around for the next episode of...
Read a fucking book. Read a fucking book. Read a fucking book. People.
So this is Preacher, Until the End of the World. You can see this fantastic cover. We've got Jesse Custer here, and a little tidbit of what is to come in the book itself. Written by Garth Ennis, art by Steve Dillon, which, again, I think is absolutely fantastic. But I know there are people out there that don't like his art style, and that is perfectly acceptable. You like what you like, and you hate what you hate. So we have the introduction by Kevin Smith, of course. It's a really good read, very, very entertaining. And we start with a young Jesse Custer in 1974. We have two characters, TC and Jody. There's Jesse's mother and Jesse's father. And Jesse watches as Jody blows his father's brains out. Okay, we get an angry Jesse Custer who is cursing someone, calling them a bitch of a whore from hell. We see kind of a figure hooked up to an IV machine. We have Jesse and Tulip in ropes. And we find out that this person is Jesse's grandmother. So we get to the morning of kind of that day, and Jesse and Tulip are kind of talking about how they got to where they got, and Tulip kind of tells him that when he left, she kind of became a waitress. Kind of got sick of it and then became a hitman for this guy. Jesse's trying to kind of comprehend everything, and she lets Jesse know that she's in debt to this guy. She was supposed to do the hit. We saw that in the volume 1 where she blew that guy's jaw off. And Jesse's like, let's go and speak to this guy and get everything kind of sorted out. So they go to the bar that the guy owns, and Jesse kind of does his thing a little bit. But as they're going into the bar, someone in this van is like, holy fucking dog shit, that who I think it is. And then Jesse confronts this guy, and this guy's like, go fuck yourself. And just as he does that, Jody bursts in. Jody, of course, is the guy who killed Jesse's father, this guy. And he just starts kind of shooting people. And Tulip is like, who the fuck are you? And then Jesse tries to use the word of God on Jody, but it doesn't work. And Jody takes Jesse and Tulip, puts them in the van. TC is there with the shotgun. And Jesse starts begging Tulip for forgiveness. So we know that this is something that is clearly a big deal to him. And of course, is clearly dangerous to Tulip. And they basically drive to this place called Angelville. Looks like a plantation thing. You can see the kind of the burning crosses on the thing. Jesse at this point is kind of whipped because he knows how bad this fucking place is. And they're taking him to see his grandmother. Jesse basically asks Tulip not to say anything and informs her that this is where he actually grew up. Jody taunts Jesse with his father's cigarette lighter. And then we meet his grandmother for the first time. Tulip, being Tulip, basically berates the grandmother, and Jesse is like, shut the fuck up. Jody punches Tulip, and Jesse's like, when all this is over, you're all fucking dead. The grandmother kind of berates Jesse. She kind of knows what's going on with him. We get kind of hints of it. And the grandmother says, you have until morning, and come morning, Jody is going to blow the little bitch's brains out. And this is where Jesse finally breaks down and starts to tell Tulip his history, his backstory, his childhood. Fantastic cover art here as well. So we see Jesse's grandmother talking to, we presume, is God. She's a very religious woman, and so she's kind of communing with him. And then we move to when the story began. So this is Jesse's father, and he's getting spat on. He's just come back from Vietnam, and this woman is calling him a baby killer. We find out that this woman is Jesse's mother, who has fled from Angelville, and she's kind of gotten in with this group of hippies, and they've kind of polluted her mind as to what the soldiers who were fighting in Vietnam actually did. Now, I'm not going to get into a whole Vietnam, was it righteous or was it not debate here. I know what I know, and the soldiers that came back from Vietnam were unfairly kind of labeled these things. Whether or not you agree with me, that's perfectly fine. Leave a comment in the comment section below if you have any thoughts or feelings on the treatment of soldiers after the Vietnam War, because that's ostensibly what this is. But as an Australian, I can't really speak to this, so I'm just going by the comic book. Jesse's father's in the bar when the woman walks in, and you can see she feels regret for what she has done, and they kind of talk it out and kiss and kind of end up getting a hotel room together. So that's how Jesse's father and mother met, and Jesse's born, and his father and mother kind of raise him the right way, and his father's working jobs to keep the family afloat, and it's a happy family for all intents and purposes. And then Jody and TC come into the picture again. They track them down because Jesse's grandmother has been looking for her daughter, and Jesse's father and Jody, of course, fight, and ultimately TC with the shotgun basically subdues the whole thing, and they're taken back to Angelville. Jesse's grandmother tells Jesse's father, John, that he's going to marry her daughter, and they're going to kind of live here and be one big happy family. So Jesse's raised in this environment, but his father is still trying to kind of teach him how to be a good man, because what's going on in Angelville is just religious fervor at its extreme. Jesse makes a friend, this guy called Billy Bob. You can see he's only got one eye. The reason being his parents are brother and sister. And that kind of family of inbred hillbillies, so to speak, it's kind of coming down through the bloodline. But he's a happy kid, and he's best friends with Jesse. So Jesse actually has a friend out here, and they go fishing and all that kind of thing. And his grandmother at the same time is trying to teach him the Bible, and when he questions it, she basically just smacks him in the face. We get a little bit of Jesse kind of being raised by his mother, trying to teach him, and him and Billy Bob's kind of friendship. We find out that TC is into like perverted sex things, primarily bestiality. And we find out that they actually have killed Jesse's dog, Duke. And Jesse basically has taken this to heart. He's called Jody a dirty fucker, and the grandmother doesn't like that kind of language. So they are going to put him in the coffin. Of course, I believe this is after Jesse's father has been killed. So Jesse is taken to the coffin. His mother is kind of dragged away, and the coffin is basically placed underwater with a breathing tube, and he is down in this kind of swamp in this coffin with just an air tube to breathe for 1 week. Okay, another fantastic piece of cover art. So you can see the air tube is there, and he's kind of underwater. This issue is called How I Learned to Love the Lord. They bring him out after 1 week, and he kind of succumbs to the teachings of his grandmother. As he grows older, he and Billy Bob kind of continue with their friendship. Jesse's talking about love and marriage and whatnot, and Billy Bob's like, well, I'm just going to marry my sister, so that's fine. And one night he is staying in the barn because it was raining. He's asleep in the haystack and he sees TC come in with a chicken, so he hides in the haystack while TC basically rapes the chicken. But when he goes to take a piss, he pisses in the haystack right on Billy Bob. Billy Bob kind of yells out, and now he's been found out, and TC, not wanting this to come out, slices Billy Bob's neck, killing him. And Jesse, seeing this, goes after TC and beats the shit out of him. And Jody says, you want a fucking piece of me now? And Jody basically kicks the crap out of Jesse in the ensuing fight, forcing Jesse to call him uncle by breaking his arm. He is put in the coffin, again, this time for a month instead of a week. And when he gets out, he goes and visits Billy Bob's family. You can see Billy Bob's sister is really upset because she was going to marry Billy Bob. And Billy Bob's father basically tells him to fuck off because his family is poison. So Jesse leaves, and that's when he kind of starts traveling around a bit, and he's at a bar where he's with another woman, but he sees Tulip. Tulip sees him, and that's where he and Tulip kind of connect, and that's where their life kind of really starts, and they just drive around boosting cars, having sex, enjoying life, and all that kind of thing. Tulip goes off to get him some cigarettes, some booze, and that's when he is found by Jody and TC, who take him back. He doesn't say anything about Tulip because he doesn't want her to get involved. So Tulip thinks that he left her when in actual fact it wasn't his decision. Well, it kind of was, but he was protecting her from Jody and TC. So now she knows the truth. He goes back to Angelville. His grandmother sets him up to be a preacher, which he kind of becomes. And that's where the very first issue of Preacher, which I covered back in Volume 1, kind of begins. And it's becoming morning, and we see the grandmother, Jody and TC, come into the room. The grandmother said, you have until morning, and then Jody's going to blow her brains out. And what happens? Jody blows her brains out. Wow. When I first read this, I was fucking shocked. But amazing art. It's almost Frank Miller Sin City-esque with the black and white, and then the image of Jesse. Yeah. Okay. We have John Wayne sitting on the coffin for this cover. Again, the covers for these books are phenomenal. I would have loved the complete run as single issues. I would have absolutely died for that. But get it as you can get it. Jesse is gobsmacked that this has happened, and his grandmother kind of taunts him a bit and tells Jody kind of what to do. She's glad everything is over, but then Tulip wakes up. What the fuck? Jesse is kind of whipped now. And Jody basically is talking about how he's annoyed that family don't stand for their own. He's talking about Jesse there, and then Jesse gets visited by John Wayne, and John Wayne kind of reminds him what he's been trying to teach him through his entire life, especially since he first appeared to Jesse. Well, no, this would be the second time he appeared to Jesse, sitting on the coffin talking to him when he was underwater as a child. The grandmother is like, now that this has happened, let's see if he isn't back in line, if Jesse's not back in line. And we see Tulip has been resurrected and is talking to God. And he's basically telling Tulip, listen, I brought you back for him, for Jesse. Tell Jesse, stop looking for me. There's no point in you looking for me anymore. So Jesse kind of becomes the drunken preacher again in his mind, thinking about all the times that shit has gone down. John Wayne is telling him that they're partners, like, don't worry about it, this will all work itself out. We get another flashback to Jesse and Tulip, their kind of romance, and then TC comes to kind of wake up Jesse, getting him out of this funk, and Jesse is like, fuck this shit, beats the ever-living shit out of TC and just leaves him fucking dead on the ground. He is not having any more of this. After the talk with John Wayne, he's like, nope, this is it. This is where we go from here. And he walked the walk. And then he strides out there and he is prepared to do some damage. There's Jesse's grandmother. Tulip watching the sunrise, still talking with God. Trying to kind of tell God, this is what you're going to do for me. And God's like, don't push it. And Jesse kind of goes out and confronts Jody. We see Tulip finding Jesse's grandmother, and she basically beats the crap out of her with her oxygen tank. Jesse uses the word of God to tell everyone to burn, and Jody, who is basically on fire now, dives into the kind of trough. And then he and Jesse are going to have a showdown. So they fight. Jesse gets in some good hits. Jody gets in some hits. Tulip follows the trail of blood, finds TC staggering away. She has the shotgun. TC's kind of begging her not to do anything. And she ends up shooting him and killing him, which distracts Jesse enough for Jody to get a great punch in. Custer gets the fence post with the nail and stabs it in Jody's face, but he just keeps coming. Jody breaks some of his fingers, headbutts him, and Jesse's grandmother is screaming from the burning house. So Jody, she's like, kill him. Jody gets him in a neck lock, and Jesse ends up biting his arm, which lets him kind of release Jesse. Jesse snaps his back, and kind of while he's laying there, he uses the word of God and says, die, which Jody now is succumbing to. The grandmother is in this burning place. She's got the oxygen tank that she's hooked up to, which explodes and sends her flying out of the building while Jesse screams out, yee-haw. And then we get him and Tulip kind of reconciling after everything that's happened, and they kiss while his ancestral home burns around him. And that is kind of the end of the first story arc for this volume. The first time reading this, it was seriously fucked up. The second time reading it, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I know a little bit more about the characters and things like that. So it was a different experience, but still an absolutely fantastic one. Now we move on to this story arc involving the Grail. And this just gets so fucked up. It is not funny. So there's stuff in here that people are definitely going to find offensive. So if you don't want to be offended by a comic book, please shut the video off, like, subscribe, leave a comment, do all that good stuff. But if you want to know what the fuck is going on with Hoover, her star, and I forget the chick's name, but I'll remember it later, then by all means, let's continue. The Saint of Killers has come to Angelville, and he says, well, preacher, not bad for a beginner. I love the Saint of Killers so much. Jesse and Tulip are in a hotel, and they're getting noise complaints from the other people in the hotel. The bellboy has come up and said, listen, we're getting noise complaints because they're just too loud with their fucking. And so he gives him money to kind of go away, and then they go at it again. We now get this mansion owned by this character called Jesus de Sade, which is a direct nod to the Marquis de Sade, a kind of... he was a French aristocrat who was jailed for his perverted sexual practices. He wrote some books. I've actually read the writings of the Marquis de Sade, which I read for my honours thesis. But also, thanks to my brilliant wife, I have actually stood in the Marquis de Sade's jail cell in a castle in Paris, which blew my mind when we went there. It was one of the most amazing things I've ever seen in my life. So Jesus de Sade is looking for his shipment of heroin, and the heroin was supposed to be delivered by this mule, and it's gone missing, and he kind of wants it. This thing here, what's going on here, he's trying to find an animal that he hasn't had sex with, and it turns out to be an armadillo, which his servant delivers to him. Yeah, that's how freaking deep and weird this shit gets. So Jesse and Tulip are in the bath. It's still kind of like the honeymoon period of their relationship. They're kind of talking things out and getting to know each other again. Then we get the Grail. We have Hoover and Featherstone. That's her name, Featherstone. And they're getting a person from the Grail to come. The Grail have heard about Jesse, and they're actually looking for him. Why? We don't know. Who are the Grail? We don't know. This whole thing is a mystery. And so Jesse and Tulip come to this bar, and because they're in the same town that Cassidy's in, and they reconcile. They meet back up with Cassidy, who has been kind of partying down here, and he's here for a reason. So they get a picture taken. They all say Arseface as a joke to Arseface from Volume 1. That comes back into the story later on. And now we meet her star a German agent of the Grail. He knows that there is a mole in the organization, and he knows who the mole is, so he kills him almost immediately. And he shows them a picture of a young Jesse Custer from a file that he found in the Grail headquarters. Why would the Grail have a picture of a young Jesse Custer? What the fuck is going on? This is just some high-level conspiracy theory shit right here. Tulip goes back to the hotel. Jesse and Cassidy kind of reminisce about old things, and Cassidy says the reason he's here is because his girlfriend has actually died. They're watching an old kind of Western on TV, and then the TV channel is changed to a football game. Jesse and Cassidy are like, hey, we were watching that, and the people are like, fuck you, so they just start beating the crap out of everyone in the bar. Typical Cassidy, Jesse stuff. Cassidy's about to bite this guy. Jesse uses the word of God on him, saying no. He apologizes immediately to Cassidy, saying, I know you asked me not to do that. And Cassidy's like, don't worry about it. It's all good. So they kind of wander the streets, and Cassidy lets him know that he buried his girlfriend. Okay, we come to Bob and Frank. Bob and Frank are sexual investigators. What exactly does that mean? You'll find out, trust me. So, they've been tasked to get back Jesus Desard's heroin. Cassidy is in his girlfriend's apartment with Jesse. He's kind of doing a shit. They're kind of joking about it. The cat is just going ape shit. And while Cassidy is trying to kind of get the cat, he kicks a hole in the wall and finds a box. The box is kind of booby-trapped, and the cat is still being an absolute piece of shit. Her star is talking to Featherstone. Featherstone wants to know what his story is, and her star is kind of not giving him any of it, but he does let loose that the Grail is protecting the sacred bloodline of Christ, and he kind of believes that the next level of that is going to be Jesse Custer. Jesse and Cassidy are still in the apartment. Everything is dark because it's daytime, and the cat, being the cat, like jumps at Cassidy, and Cassidy stumbles backwards and falls out of the window, catching on fire in the sunlight. Jesus Desard is getting ready for his party, riding his bicycle around. He parks it in this guy's ass for some reason. And then we have Cassidy. Jesse's put the cat in the toilet. I don't abide by that. I think that's fucking disgraceful, but hey, this is a comic book. They find that the box was actually booby-trapped with dynamite, and it contains heroin and a card for the sexual investigators. Now, Hoover has been charged with going and procuring a prostitute for her star because her star needs sexual release, sexual gratification. So he doesn't know what to do. He's not that sort of a person that knows how to willingly go and talk to prostitutes. So he goes and he tries to get a prostitute to come. She gives him a card, and he calls the card, and the card is Bob and Frank, sexual investigators. We find out that her star has been keeping close tabs on everything that has been going on, and that the other guy that was in the car was communicating with the police and whatnot. So he was the traitor. Jesse tells Tulip that exactly what happened last night, why he's getting back so late. Cassidy's hiding under the bed when Bob and Frank come into his girlfriend's apartment to try and find the heroin. Now, this pisses Cassidy off because Cassidy knew she was a user. She'd gotten clean, but these two guys using her as a mule kind of put her back on the smack, and because of that was why she died. So he has a kind of vendetta against these guys. They rescue the cat out of the toilet. Jesse, Tulip, and Cassidy meet up and they kind of make a plan. Hoover and Featherstone are kind of talking about the Grail here. And now we get to the prostitute that Hoover set up for her star to meet in an alley. So we see her star in the alley, and then we see Bob come, and her star is like, but you're a man, stop. And then Bob just rapes him. Or it's implied that Bob kind of rapes him in the alley, because Hoover unwittingly sets him up with a male prostitute, one of these sexual investigators. And by sexual investigators, it's basically implied that they're private detectives who just fuck things. We have Jesus Desard here. Her star is pissed off because he was raped by a man, and he believes now that Hoover turned him into a homosexual. Cassidy and Jesse go to the investigator's office, where they find these people going through things, and Cassidy and Jesse throw them out of a window. Her star is trying to strangle Hoover, and Featherstone gets him off by saying, we found Custer. Pardon me. And Jesse ties this guy up, and he's basically, where is the heroin going to? Punches the crap out of him. Finally gets the name Jesus Desard out of him so that they can kind of go to the source where all of this kind of started. And then he gets thrown out of the window as Hoover and her star come up to the building. Custer and Cassidy have left. They find the guy who has been thrown through a wall, and her star shoots his dick off and then blows his brains out after he gets the information on Jesus Desard. Hoover, of course, can't take this and throws up. Jesse doesn't want Tulip going to the party, but Tulip's going anyway, dressed like that. And we have Bob and Frank going to the party with the heroin that they recovered from Cassidy's girlfriend's house. Bob asks if he is allowed to stay. Jesus Desard says yes, but only do things with the help. Do not do anything with the other party guests because they're all upper-class aristocrats. Jesse punches the shit out of the guy who wants an invitation. They all go into the party and realize how it's like a debauched orgy. And so they decide to split up and look for these people. Cassidy and Jesse split up. Tulip goes into the bathroom, finds a woman who propositions her, sticks a gun in her face, and basically tries to find out where Jesus Desard is. And Cassidy is meeting these people. Jesse walks into this room where this guy's just naked in stocks with a bunch of sheep. No fucking idea what's going on there. And he finally meets Jesus Desard, realizes who he is, tells him to stay there. He's going to go and get his friend. At this point, the Grail, led by her star, Hoover, Featherstone, and a whole bunch of mercenaries come to Jesus Desard's party to capture Custer. All this weird shit is just kind of going on in the background. Jesse finds Cassidy, takes him back, but Jesus Desard is gone. And when they come into the party, the Grail and the mercenaries are like, what the fuck is going on? Tulip hears Herstar talking about capturing Custer. Frank and Bob are the nerds at this party. They're just sitting there kind of pissed off and angry. Jesse walks in, finding Jesus Desard, and tells him, I asked you to stay there, why'd you leave? And he's like, well, because I fucking wanted to leave, so he left. And then he finds them filming a porno, and there's a young child there, and he freaks the fuck out. He's like, fuck this, and beats the shit out of Jesus Desard, tells this guy to eat his gun, and at this point, Tulip goes up to Hoover, kind of tries to seduce him, but pulls the gun out, and Herstar shoots at her. She shoots back. Cassidy recognizes the voice of these sex detectives. He punches Frank in the face, but he punches him so hard his fist gets stuck. And Bob, seeing the opportunity, is going to basically bugger Cassidy. Tulip is in a firefight with the Grail and the French mercenaries. She manages to take out quite a few of them because she is a crack shot. She shoots this guy in the dick, and she says, thanks, Dad, because clearly her father taught her how to shoot. Cassidy's still trying to get his fist out of this guy's face, realizing that Bob is going to come and kind of ass rape him. Manages to get him out, punches Bob, and Bob falls on the roof of the car. Tulip, still fighting Herstar, shoots his ear off. Cassidy kind of comes down, realizes what's going on. Herstar is after Jesse Custer, so Cassidy pretends that he is Jesse Custer just to save Tulip so that Herstar won't kill her. At this point, Jesse is just beating the living shit out of Jesus Desard because of this disgusting porno film that he's making while this guy's eating his gun. He uses the word of God on them. And then as he leaves the house, he sees Tulip has been kidnapped, and he rushes to his car to find Bob pantsless, or with his pants down, I should say, on the roof of his car. Herstar is trying to interrogate Cassidy while Jesse chases them down. He drives past Hoover with this guy on the roof of the car. Hoover is in another van and doesn't have Cassidy, but I believe Hoover has Jesse, if I'm not Tulip, if I'm not mistaken rightly. Let me just Hoover has Tulip as his prisoner, so he runs Hoover off the road, and Featherstone is also in the van, and Tulip beats the kind of shit out of her, grabs her by the neck with her legs. Jesse rescues Tulip, Featherstone and Hoover are down, and Bob is hanging over a tree pantsless. They find out where Herstar is taking Cassidy, who he believes is Custer, and it is to Masada. So Jesse now has them as prisoners and forces them to drive. Cassidy is in a plane with Herstar, and Herstar basically shows him how much power he actually has. There's a refueling plane coming down. They are in Featherstone's hotel room. They have them tied up. They're eating breakfast and kind of enjoying themselves. They land in Masada. where Cassidy is taken by her star and to the Grail headquarters, so to speak. And he's kind of given the backstory of what is going on to an extent. So they finally find out where they're going from Featherstone and Hoover. They take Hoover and Featherstone, but Featherstone jumps out of the car to escape. And she's covering her ears so she can't hear the word of God as Jesse tries to confront her. They take Hoover down to the beach, and he basically forces Hoover to count 3 million grains of sand. At this point, her star is kind of showing Cassidy around, believing he's Custer, and he wants him to use the word of God to heal this man's legs. Of course, Cassidy can't do it, and the man just falls over when he drops his crutches. Jesse doesn't want Tulip to go to Masada, but Tulip is like, fuck that shit. They take Cassidy down into this dungeon because her star gets a call from Featherstone and realizes that Cassidy isn't Custer, and they open fire on him with a machine gun. Tulip and Jesse are arguing about whether or not she should go to Masada, and ultimately Tulip kind of wins that argument. They realize that Cassidy isn't dead from the machine guns, and they blow him away again and leave him in darkness. And then we have Hoover on the beach counting the sand. He gets to 9,998, 9,999, 10, and then the wind blows his pile away, and then he has to start again with all of the grains of sand. And that is where, until the end of the world ends, we have backstory to Jesse Custer. Tulip knows why he left. We have a little bit of Cassidy backstory with his girlfriend and the drugs. We have the Grail entering this now. They've captured Cassidy. He's in Masada, in the Grail compound. Jesse and Tulip know where he is. Her star knows Cassidy isn't Custer, and Jesse and Tulip are going to go and help him, which will come into the third graphic novel called Proud Americans, which of course I'm going to read and review because I'm just loving rereading this series so fucking much. Okay, so this was Preacher Until the End of the World, one of the best Preacher graphic novels, but just graphic novels in general, in my personal opinion. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, leave a comment, do all of that good stuff. Tell your friends. We're at 470 subscribers. Get to 500, maybe there'll be a special video. I'm not saying yes or no, but quite possibly. But you know what? Regardless of if you enjoyed it or if you didn't, I just hope everyone stays safe, has a fantastic rest of your day, and of course, most importantly, please people, read a fucking book.